The truth is, for years now, I was clear in my head that I was going to be one of the best in the world.
No way, he folds 2 kings.
Hours and hours and hours in front of a solver.
I'm actually speechless.
If I play 4,000 tournaments a year, when my competition is playing 400 tournaments a year, I'm going to be much sharper. I think my intuition will be better. What does the best in the world do today? Well, the best in the world spends 5 hours studying, does a 10-hour session, and the next day reviews them.
Nick Petrangelo referred to you as a very aggressive, exploitative player who then really sharpened up technically and became, one of the most GTO-oriented players.
I think it is very, very important also when you work with solvers that you create a strategy that you understand.
What's the plan to get that player to Tritons in 3 years?
The first thing, without a doubt, would be...
Welcome to the first translated GTO Lab podcast. I have terrible Spanish, and although Juan Pardo has pretty good English, I can understand not wanting, the long form content. A podcast is a lot in not your native language. So we have brought aboard my friend Ellie to translate. She's going to help us out. Thank you, Ellie.
No problem.
And welcome both of you to the GTO Lab podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to stay here. I would like to do the interview in English, but my English is not good for do a good conversation, but I hope the second part in the future can do in your language.
There was going to be a lot of sympathy for you until you did that introduction in pretty much perfect English. And now people are going to say, what? The guy speaks English?
No, sorry. In Spanish.
Yeah, no. First question I'd like to ask you is about your background in poker. Malacca style is a name I'm very familiar with from Poker Stars back in the day, but I was very surprised when I Googled you and you're only 31. So I'm curious about your background, how you got into poker, when you became a professional, and how you got to this point now.
Well, I started at 17 years old. That is 14 years ago. I've been playing poker. I really went professional a little later, let's say. I started in school with friends. And 6 months after playing, I was lucky enough in a sandy storm. I remember a tournament for $11 and 27,000 people on PokerStar. I won a prize there of $14,000. Being very young, it was really crazy. And I started, I was lucky to practically within 6 months of starting to win a 5-figure prize. And I had just finished high school, more or less. At the same time that I got this prize, and it was about deciding whether to pursue a degree or not. I was very young, and my parents would have been extremely upset if I had told them I wasn't going to study. So I moved from Malaga to Sevilla and started studying physical activity and sports sciences while I was juggling this with poker. So basically, I spent about 3 or 4 years multi-tabling poker with my studies. I was lucky that I was able to go on an Erasmus to Portugal, to a place in Faro where there were many Spanish poker players at that time. And basically, I took the Erasmus to play poker and moved into an apartment with a bunch of friends. I didn't know any of them, I imagine, but anyway, I was there for a year, which was an incredible learning experience. It was all day playing poker. Talk about poker 24/7. The truth is that I didn't pass many subjects in the degree program. That's why in the end, it took me 5 years to finish the degree in 24, because I was basically balancing it with poker. And it was a very crazy time. I remember that I reached about 100,000 in bankroll or so when I finished the trip, more or less the Erasmus, and returned to Spain. I remember that I ended up having about 100,000 in bankroll just when I started dating with my wife, with Irene, to this day, back then. So it was a year after returning that I basically had only a year and a half left of my degree. I wasn't very focused on poker at the beginning of the relationship. We were long distance. One day she would come, another day I would go to Pamplona, which is in the north of Spain. So It was a year when poker didn't go very well for me. And I remember that I basically went from 100K to 3K in bankroll. Basically, I ended up crippling. This was because of in 2015, around 2015. And I remember talking with Adrian Amadi, and I said to him, hey, I need a backing. He had already won, I think, the World Series of Europe. He was already playing high stakes at that time. And it was the only time in my life that I had backing. The backing lasted just 6 months. It was pretty crazy because just starting, I hit one for 80,000 or 90,000, and then I also hit a tournament of this for around 200,000 or so. Basically, in just 5 or 6 months, I won about 360,000 or something like that. We split with Adri, I kept half, and from there I started again to, it's been the only part of my career where I played, let's say, backed, and then I started to play on my own. I finished college around that time. I was there for a year, kind of not really knowing what to do because my wife had just, my girlfriend from Gary, but now my wife had just found a job in Pamplona. So we were there a bit, playing a bit in the dark for a while. And I was lucky that around that time I won a big 25,000 in party for about 600,000 or so. And I said, we have to leave. We can't keep being in this situation. And basically that was when I moved to England. Roughly in the year 2018, more or less. It's the part, let's say, from the beginning of my career. Let's say I could divide it into 2 parts. The first part is this where I'm half playing a bit in illegality in Spain, half studying the professional career, but without, it is completely impressive. And then the turning point basically is at the end of 2017 to 18 when I decide to move to England.
Early on, before poker, were you always a games guy? Were you always a strategic thinker, or was poker kind of out of the blue for you?
The truth is, yes, I played a lot of card games with my friends in my village, in a little town near my city, Malaga, but nothing special. I was really, really competitive. Sports in general, I didn't particularly excel in any, but I wasn't bad at them either. And what I was very competitive. I've always hated losing, and I've never liked to feel inferior to anyone in anything. I mean, let's say, yes, I had a very competitive side from a very young age.
Was there a clear point when you decided the poker life is for you and you're either done with school or I'm not sure if you finished your degree, but was there a clear decision point where you said, hey, I'm all in on being a professional poker player?
Yes, I did finish the degree, but I finished it basically for my family, for my partner, because she was already finishing her master's in Spain. So surely if she hadn't come into my life, I wouldn't have finished the degree. I would have moved to the United Kingdom before. Let's say that deep down, I always knew. It was something that from the moment I started already with 17 and 18, I was passionate about it. I loved it from day one. It is true that I had many ups and downs along the way, but basically from the year I was in Portugal for Erasmus, when I was already 19, 20 years old, when I was already playing my first ETPs and so on, of course, that I was going to be a poker player, that I would reach high stakes no matter what. I didn't know when, but to me, it was something that was going to happen. And there was no doubt about it. It was just about finishing my degree. Also, my wife finishing her studies. And from there, when the opportunity arose, going abroad and boosting my career. But I always knew that I was never going to work as a physical education teacher or anything similar, because once I got to know poker, I think it's very difficult to go back.
It sounds like you ran hot pretty early on, certainly in that backing arrangement with Adrian, if I understand it, where 3K became 300 plus K very quick. And I see that going one of two ways. Very often you've got a group of people who win that money, they spend a chunk of it, they think they're a lot better than they are, they play too big, and or they get comfortable with their game. And then there are other people who, hey, that's the bankroll that lets me play higher, motivates me to be even better. Based on where you are today, it certainly feels like you're in that latter camp. Someone who that influx to your bankroll was very beneficial to your career. I'm curious if you have any thoughts about, for that person out there who's going to have a score tomorrow, how they kind of keep their nose down and keep working hard and stay humble and make that a good thing rather than a bad thing for their life.
I had actually been at it for quite a long time. When Adri backed me for those 6 months, it was like 4 years, more or less 5 years that I had been playing poker. And like I said, I had reached the top of 100,000, then suddenly 3,000, basically gambling, not being focused on poker. Obviously, I didn't have a great level at that time either, but I feel that the moment you get a good score, you no longer need a backer, or you can continue being backed. But yes, I decide to invest this money and have them back me. It's an option, and many people do it, right? And in the meantime, I'm playing with other players' money, and there we split, and the alliance for him, and that's it, right? But I think I've always been very clear that one must take responsibility for their own money, that you have to try as much as possible, because I don't think you're going to play at the same level of focus. If you are playing, you miss it. If you are playing with your own money than when you are playing with someone else's, I think you always will. You will have a much greater focus. You will feel much more motivated over time. It will help you be more responsible ultimately in almost every aspect of your life if you become your own boss and don't depend on third parties. So I practically, I was clear about it, and it was the only time in my career when I needed backing. It was those 5 or 6 months, and I've never liked it. And although it's true that I have backed many people, I had a stable of 16, 17 Spanish players. I always started around 2017, and today there are almost only 2 players left. It is true that from an investment point of view, it seems like a good project to me, because if you get involved and give a lot of coaching, you will help your friends improve. They will benefit from you, and it is an extra source of income, right? But I have never liked being on the other side, and it is something that I think can be positive in the short term, but I think counterproductive in the long term. That's at least how I see it. Yes, the fact that you are there as long as you need, but not cling to it out of comfort. I mean, because I think it's easy to fall into complacency, to relax, to play just enough. And when you're putting yourself on the line, betting your money day by day, I think that's what also pushes you a bit forward and makes you take more responsibility for your work, and also develop your own personal autonomy.
Tournament Savagery is 25 hours of structured tournament strategy by Nick Petrangelo and Daniel Devores. This course covers pre-bubble, bubble, in the money, and the final table broken down like never before. We also cover post-flop ICM, blind versus blind, and much more. Buy now for $9.99 only at gtolab.com.
There seems to be a split among the top players in the world. And in my head, when I look at the roster of elite players who play online still and elite players who don't play online at all, there seems to almost be an age cutoff where the people maybe 35 and older don't seem to play online very much. And among the elite players who are under 35, they almost all play online. Can you talk a bit about what drives you and keeps you playing online? And, the stakes are significantly lower, but the competition is significantly tougher. I'd like to hear some thoughts about what you still love about online poker and what brings you to the table.
Okay. For me, it's a matter of training. I mean, if I'm not playing the toughest tournaments in the world, I will not be competitive when I go to play a street, let's say. It's much more a 5K online or a 10K of GG millions or some 25,000 in GG, it's infinitely harder. And that really is competitive poker from my point of view. So when I go to play a 25,000 or 100,000 at an EPT or Triton, it's a way to trick. Maybe there are days that, I'll give you an example. Monte Carlo, it was the worst, the last Triton. It was the worst trip of my career. It has also been the best year, but well, that was the worst 10, 12 career in terms of money. And I returned on Monday and sat down to play online and played a session of 5,000 or 6,000. But because it's training, it's like if I play 4,000 tournaments a year, when my competition is playing 400 tournaments a year, is that I'm playing a lot more than them. I'm going to be much sharper. I think my intuition will be better. Intuitively, I'll know better how the metagame is. It's like if I'll give you an example, an analogy with soccer. Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi go to play in Arabia and they don't train, they only play the match on Sunday. If they then go to a more competitive league and go to Europe, they are still Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi, but they won't perform at the same level of performance as the player who trains 5 or 6 days a week, works hard at the gym, is playing all day, spends 8 or 9 hours in front of a PC 4 or 5 days a week. So, of course, maybe in the future I am that Cristiano Ronaldo or Messi, in the sense of I have children, I want to relax, I prefer other things in life, and maybe my poker level is acceptable, but I may not be at that top when I go to play a live festival. So, well, I think those of us who are currently under 32 or 33 years old, most are European players who are in a market where we can play online. And I also think that it is an advantage compared to the American player, so to speak, who has more restrictions online and that cannot play. I think they have fewer training opportunities because, as I see it, the same, using a trainer and studying, putting yourself day by day, putting you in complicated situations, and a game having to solve complex problems in a short time. So I think I feel it as a kind of day-to-day training. And I always say that if I am not able to play my best poker in a $250 tournament and be the best player in that tournament, I'm not going to be ready when under the maximum pressure in a 100,000 tournament at a Triton final table with all the cameras watching to deliver my best performance. I think that is achieved in the day-to-day work.
Yeah, I'm very much, as you know, on the other side there as someone who doesn't play online. And it was a compliment, but in the way that João Vieira Naza gives compliments, he said something to me maybe at the World Series. He said, "Do you play online at all?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "You play very well for not playing online at all." And yeah, I thought that was nice, but also I understood what he meant, which is, I think
there are different skills, and of course, emotional intelligence, nonverbal language, tales are very important live, and probably the more experienced players who spend more time playing live have those kinds of skills and can play better against recreational players. But it is that even not that, because against recreational players, even if you play live against a greater number of players online, even if I play with fewer, if I put in, 20 or 30 times more volume than you in a year, I'm going to face those kinds of situations more often. So probably when it really matters, I'll be able to execute them better. So I think that all of this stems from wanting to start poker very young. And in an environment where you can play online, it seems very important for you to achieve your best performance. And honestly, I really admire people who don't play online or play very little and then are capable of being very competitive at high levels because it seems impossible to me. I really admire people who are capable of being very competitive and don't have a routine of playing online.
I'd like to pivot to something you brought up about emotional intelligence, because I think it's pretty difficult to reach the high stakes in poker without developing a lot of emotional intelligence, understanding how your opponents function at the table, what makes them tick, when a nit might spaz, for example. But it's a specific type of emotional intelligence. It's emotional intelligence as it relates to adversarial games. And I feel like, myself included, a lot of poker players can fall into this trap of believing that they are, of higher emotional intelligence than they actually are. I'm curious if you have any thoughts around how much sharper poker has made you emotionally as it pertains to exploitative situations, and if it translates at all off the felt to collaborations, like a relationship, whether that's platonic with friends or your family or your partnership with your wife. I'm curious if you think about any benefits or interference that getting so good at poker as it relates to emotional intelligence has brought.
In general, when you spend a lot of time in front of the PC, you might tend to develop a more introverted personality. I have been quite extroverted my whole life, and I feel that over the years, due to poker and spending so much time in front of a PC, I have become a much more introverted, because it's, if in the end you don't go to a job where you talk all day with people or at a poker table, if you only play live, you're interacting with the players at the table all day. Well, in the end, it's true that it can make you a bit more reserved, especially if you do not understand very well what they are saying when you play live because of the language, as is my case, although, are very important skills when it comes to live poker. I think seeing how people are at the table, how they are perceived is, although it may probably be underestimated, and I might be giving a lot of weight to the technical aspect of the game, but it's something that I believe I have improved over the years. At the beginning, I remember when I played the live tournament, my first high rollers, I was a nervous wreck all the time there, like stiff with my helmet, trying not to talk to anyone because I wanted to be very focused there on the mind. But oh well, I think it's something that as a poker player, you develop it, especially over the years. It's true that if you have a very introverted personality and low emotional intelligence, many times you're going to have your GTO story in your head, and you will take very uncreative or non-exploitative lines, probably. That's what I've improved the most in the next 2-3 years, I would say, by talking a lot with Joao, with Adri, who are players with very high emotional intelligence, with the ability to adapt a lot to opponents, something that I perhaps have always been a bit of a bookworm in the sense of very much having game theory optimal in my head. You're very focused on the technical aspect of the game. And I think that in the end, when he talks, it opens up that, hey, this is your perception, but the opponent perceives this thing about you, or that perceives this or that, or their poker knowledge doesn't reach that far. So they don't have a bluff in the dribble in this sequence, right? So these are situations that I think are very important, which also come from experience if you're not an excessively extroverted person. And I believe that has given me a boost in my game in the last few years, playing a much more exploitative game. You will have greater emotional intelligence and be more aware of how people perceive me or how far their knowledge can go, and from there, make one move or another, right?
One of the things that helps a lot of poker players with kind of the introversion and loneliness of the profession, and also opening us up to different strategies, are study groups or just friends that you talk hands a lot with. Some are more tight knit and share more action than others. Some, share all their reads, where some just kind of study together. But I'm curious, I know you and Adrian are pretty close. If who else you would consider in your group, if you tend to study more alone or with other people, where you kind of fall on that information sharing with your friends, if you're willing to explain. But yeah, kind of want to know who your boys are and where you fall on the studying together, sharing info, sharing strategies.
With the the person I've worked with the most in the past was Vicent Bosca. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he was a high stakes cash player when I started to play. He was already playing when there was traffic on PokerStars. He played 100, 200, 200, 400 on PokerStars. And let's say that with him, I set up a group of players to back around 2017, 2018. Let's say that was the craziest period I've had in terms of studying, improving. Let's say he was the main part I've worked with throughout my career. Throughout my career, especially those 2 years, but they was super, super intense. And then giving coaching to my group along with him, but from the high stakes scene, because he practically left poker. Never, with Hadri, for example, probably will never have spoken more than 10 hours to discuss hands. Mostly it has been live on all trips. With him, as well as with NASA and Juan Vieira, we have talked a lot about strategy, about poker, but during the trips. Day to day, I could say it has been quite except for the time when I was with my partner, with Vicent Bosca. The other part of the career, let's say, has been quite solitary when it comes to studying. When I talked about strategy the most, it was mainly during trips, but day to day, most of the time, let's say I've done it alone.
Okay, I've got kind of a fun question. If you could assemble a study group with 3 other players where you will pick up from them, but you won't give anything away to them, 3 players who are not Spanish speakers or just not from Spain or South America, so people that you're probably not regularly talking strategy with, who are 3 players you would like to be a fly on the wall for their study sessions, and get, all of their thoughts about hands, opponents, etc.?
Probably I would tend to look to see what 2 profiles similar to, right? Okay. And maybe I could tell you Alex Kulev, Alamo, and Vladimir Mirniko. These 3 players, because with Adrian, we both know each other very well, with Joao too. But 3 players I haven't talked much with about poker, and that they can give me a different point of view or more sinister exploits, let's say. That happens to me with these 3 players.
Aren't you worried that after that you would find yourself all in every other hand?
I already do it so well. Not really. It would be a bit crazier, surely, but I think it would be a good trio of aggression.
Excellent. On the topic of style, you mentioned yourself as more of a technical player, looking to expand beyond that. I'm curious, Nick Petrangelo referred to you as a very aggressive, exploitative player back in the day, who then really sharpened up technically and became, one of the most GTO-oriented players. Do you feel that way about your game? If so, was there a point where you really decided to engage with GTO theory and study super hard?
So my game really seen the solvers appeared, and I started studying with Pure Solver or later GTO Wizard. It has always been a quite technical game, I would say, because I have never been the most creative at the level of intelligence, nor a super capable person intuitively knowing the answers, because they are very good at solving games, and I have an intelligence, none of that. Mine has been a pure repetition, hours and hours and hours in front of a solver. Therefore, having dedicated many hours to studying with this type of tools, I think my game has always been super technical. Obviously, as time has passed, it has been a much more precise, much finer technical game. But I also think that when you study a lot with solvers and you have a very well-structured technical path in your head and good memory, because I think that one of my probably greatest abilities is that I am a person who has a very good visual memory. And when I see strategies, they do stick in my head easily. As I improve technically, I think I have developed a more exploitative play over the years, because in the end, if you want to be a true exploiter, you really need to know well what the theory is. And not just the theory, but when you play and see people's tendencies, you know which spot is never bluffed. You know the spot is super counterintuitive to bluff. And I have to bluff 100% of my range. Or in a spot where I know the opponent is going to call my range here, I will have 0 bluffs. And before, my mindset was very, no, it's just that GTO says this bluff has to be made because it's the perfect combo. Now I have left that aside. If I feel that you are going to fold a lot here, I will bluff 100% of the range if needed. And if I feel that you are not going to fold at all, I will bluff 0. So I think that over the years, I still have a very technical game, but I have evolved it into a much more exploitative game. And above all, without fear of what others might say, or I don't mind making a huge blunder at leaf tables if I feel that in my head I've studied this spot and I feel that a bluff or a hero fold is needed. I trust a lot in my intuition, because my intuition is based on many, many hours of study, and especially many hours of play and per year. So let's say if I had to define myself with some type of play, I would say it would be a technical one, increasingly exploitative, let's say. I think that might be the most accurate definition.
One of the things I think about is that in 2016, for example, a player who, let's say, played a pure GTO style might have appeared extremely exploitative to the public, because seeing B150 on the flop was just like, what the fuck? This guy must be trying to savage me, but he's really just looking to implement what he just learned.
Yes, you see that a lot. People who look for the sizing to look good in front of the public. Online, you might see it too. For me, many times you have to know, as I see it, how people are going to face that sizing. Because it doesn't make much sense for me to use a sizing bet on the flop of 125% or 150%, because a solver tells me when at 60%, the opponent is going to make more mistakes. And not only that, but my strategy on the tour becomes more complicated if I don't know how he's going to respond to that. Because how are people going to respond to an overbet on the flop? I don't know. So if they respond one way or another, they make my play on the turn very complicated. So I think it is very, very important also when you work with solvers and so on, that you create a strategy that you understand and more or less understand how the population or players are going to act against your sizing, because then you can get into situations where on the turn you make many mistakes or many blunders, because you wanted to make a certain hand fold, but that hand has already folded on the flop. So maybe on the turn you were making a second barrel that starts to be a mistake, because he's calling your continuation bet, right? Let's say that I think the world of solvers and game theory optimal is complicated. You also have to find the spot where you feel comfortable and wherever, especially, is easy to execute. Because for me, maybe it could be easy to have 4 or 5 sizings on the river, but maybe you don't feel comfortable with so many sizings, and it's much better to simplify the game and have 2 or 3 sizings on the river or the turn or the flop, right? So I think that variability comes from dedicating many years and spending a lot of time putting in hours.
An ongoing conversation I've been having on the podcast is about the sacrifices people make to get to the top of this world. It started with Nick Petrangelo. We talked a lot about what he gave up to get to where he is today. Most recently, I picked that conversation up with Ben Tollerain. I'm curious if you can share some of what you feel you've sacrificed to get to the point you're at in poker, and if there's anything that you feel you've particularly missed out on with this journey.
The truth is, without a doubt, I have sacrificed spending more time with my family, with my lifelong friends. In the end, I had to leave Malaga, my city, which I love very much and have a strong emotional attachment to. But honestly, it's something I would do again 1,000 times over because I love poker. I love the game. I love the competition. I love everything poker has given me in my life. It's a life of a dream that I could never have created with any other job, probably. So while it's true that I might miss my family, I try to go down to Malaga and they come up here to Andorra whenever they can. The same with my friends. But where also poker has also given me many other friends. Here in Andorra, we have a community of 100 or 200 poker players. My closest group of poker friends live 5 or 10 minutes walking from my house. So honestly, I don't feel like I have sacrificed anything because I'm telling you, it has been an incredible life. I always tell my mother, my father, and my partner too that if I die tomorrow, everything is okay. I have been very happy. I am 31. They have been 31 incredible years. So if I feel that now, I think I am on the right path.
I would tend to agree. I think a lot of poker players with our competitive background, when we were little kids, we wanted to be professional athletes. Some of us realized that dream was not going to happen quicker than others. I'm very short and kind of realized around 9 years old. But when I look at it, I can truthfully say that I'm happier with my career than probably just about any professional athlete I could be in a dream world, which sounds insane. And I think that's definitely different for a lot of people. But the amounts of freedom we get and our ability to select friends from this group that is very curated to a lot of similar minds, definitely plenty of differences in the poker community, but we have this base layer that kind of allows you to know you can pick up a friendship with a lot of people rather quickly. Yeah, there's a ton of benefits, but I've thought about it a lot. Seth Davies and I were talking about this, but I truly think we have it better than professional athletes, despite the massive pay gap. But I'm also a kind of person who thinks we make enough money and I don't really see too much benefit to more.
Yes. The autonomy and freedom that poker gives you is incredible. You are your own boss. You have your own schedule. You don't depend on a third person for your progress. It only depends on yourself and how much you want to rise or not. Because maybe you're simply fine with your life. I want to win money a month and with 4 days a week, it is enough for me. It's fine. There is priority at the moment in each person's career for everything. But it's crazy. Just the fact of working, if you play online, working from home, not relying on a third person to promote myself. And then the relationships in the end are with people very similar to you, with the same tastes, the same interests. Generally, they are people who like the topic of economics, personal development, nutrition. In other words, more or less everyone, the personality of the poker player is usually quite aligned, and we have very similar personalities, which honestly seems incredible to me. I mean, I'm very satisfied with this life we've come to live.
Okay. I've got a tough question. So this is kind of like the path to Tritons. If there were a player who is a low to mid stakes online reg, say they're a small winner at $80 average buy-in, and live they play 1K average buy-in, what's the plan to get that player to plus EV in Tritons in 3 years? What would you tell that player they need to do? Study plan, playing, community. What do you think is going to get them there that's relevant?
The first thing, without a doubt, would be surround yourself with the right people. This is the first advice I would give to someone who wants to climb levels. Whether it's coach, I would hire coach all the time. I would sign up for GTO Lab, Ruli ones in Spanish, Educa Poker, FIF, all the schools that exist. I would absorb content, look for study groups to join, and then try to make poker easy along the way. I mean, not putting myself in situations where I would make many mistakes. For example, if you have a very high check rake, just to give you an example, on the flop, when you define in big blind, you are going to create many very complicated situations on the tour because it is a difficult strategy to execute. Unless you have a very high level of poker, you will still make many mistakes because then in the turn, there is a lot of betting, check raise again, different sizing bets. It is a difficult game to execute well. So if you see that the spot itself has the same expected value, the call and the check raise, and you go, the simplest situation, calling, I would look to simplify all the time and put myself in spots where I will not make many mistakes. Because in poker, you do not need to be a genius to make money. You just need to make fewer mistakes than your opponent. So I would look to simplify my game at the beginning to make the maximum number of mistakes possibly of the fewest possible errors. From there, little by little, as I acquire skills, as I extrapolate, I would start adding more complicated things. But above all, I would try to the flop of 2 sizings at most. On the tour, 2 icings at most. At the river, 3 icings. Simplify the game until have a clearer grasp of the theory, put in a lot of volume, and spend many hours squatting with players better than me to draw inspiration and gradually incorporate new lines into the game. That would be the first piece of advice I would think of for someone who wants to climb halfway and be a winner in the future in betting.
I have a question about your table demeanor. You always have fantastic posture, and you seem to exude a lot of confidence at the table. I'm curious if that's just a natural thing and you've always had great posture, or if this was something that you worked on consciously when you started to play live.
The truth is, for years now, practically since I went to England, I was clear in my head that I was going to be one of the best in the world. In fact, for me, I already was. In my mind, I was always the best. And it's what is said about, is discussed very well by Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich. I think that's the book, the term of suggestion. Or first goes the fact of believe it and then act like that until it finally happens, right? And with poker, I've always thought of it that way. I've always believed I'm the best at the table, even if I wasn't. But I'm not telling you now. I believed 5 or 6 years ago. But in the world, you go believing in yourself and acting. But of course, I would get up in the morning and say, what does the best in the world do today? And I would say, well, the best in the world spends 5 hours studying and then does a 10-hour session, plays 80 hands, and the next day reviews them, and so on for 5 or 6 days a week. Then, of course, I have behaved this way for many years, and many times I believed it myself. And although it wasn't true, it's a lie that has helped me on many occasions because it has made me more confident. Every time I sit down to play a session, I would not sit down if I didn't feel that day that I am the best at the table, and no one gains more expected value than me. And live, it's kind of the same. The work I have done daily online, playing on a Monday, playing on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, 5 days a week online, then gives me the confidence and security when I go to play live that I am going to be the best. Although I tell you, maybe I'm not, many times I will be wrong, and it's a belief that I'm saying to myself, but it has always helped me to approach everything with a lot of confidence in my game, with a lot of attitude. And let's say it's something I've self-reinforced in my head. And I would say that one of my greatest virtues is that I've always had a very good inner dialogue. And I myself have known how to push myself on the path very well in terms of confidence.
That brings me to another conversation we've had a couple times on the podcast, which is about this extreme level of confidence and the benefits that come from thinking you are the best, believing in yourself to an extreme degree. But there is a dark side to it. We all know people who, especially when they're at a much lower place in their career, they exude too much confidence that's off-putting to other people and can make people not want to work with them, and a lot of snickering and laughing behind their back. There's some guy who, is not plus EV in high rollers, but the way he talks and carries himself is like he's the best in the world. And then maybe people don't want to have too much to do with him. I'm curious if you have any pointers for players who are not at an elite level, how they harness this confidence that you're talking about, because I think there's a lot of benefit to it without being off-putting to other people and kind of hurting their ability to be a part of a strong community.
It is a very thin line between having a lot of self-confidence and arrogance, and it's something that has to be worked on over the years. When you're younger, it's easy for that confidence to show a little arrogance. But I think when you have many years and you also respect your rivals and the people you've played with, you know that this is a perception I have. I live it like that, but I might be wrong. Everyone sees the world with their glasses. Hey, I see the world like this, but I am fully aware that I can be wrong many times, right? And I think that's very important. For that humility, never falling into that arrogance. In that sense, always respect the opinions of rivals, not being afraid. One of the negative points probably of that arrogance is that you don't delve into the hands, or you don't want to recount a hand that you can sense is a mistake. But you prefer to keep it to yourself and not mention it. In my case, to Adrian or NASA, to talk about strategy. For years now, I don't mind seeming ridiculous and describing a hand in which I played badly, and deep down I know it, and I don't care about being exposed in front of them or something like that. It might have mattered before. When I was less mature, it might have mattered. Did I prefer to keep quiet the average look they played me? Because I probably made one of the biggest mistakes of the trip. But I think above all that arrogance that maybe we all could have had it at some point to gain that confidence. It's very counterproductive for me game, because as I said, you create an echo chamber where you don't talk to anyone. You end up believing your own fallacies and your game stagnates. I think when it also improves is speaking like and seeing other players' points of view and realizing that we're all here for the same reason. There are times when I will have a more lucid day with more creativity, and others when I will make many mistakes. And well, being open to that, above all having confidence, but always knowing that it is all an invention of our mind, right?
Introducing the GTO Lab ICM Trainer. Train all positions at once. The new and better way of learning poker tournaments. Master all stages of the tournament. Pre-bubble, bubble, in the money, 2 and 3 tables left, and the final table. Learn how to crush tournaments from our coaches and get the most out of the trainer. We have the biggest ICM library ever, with over 14,000 solutions created by Nick Petrangelo and Daniel Devores. Join GTO Lab today and stay ahead of the curve.
That's a great point about how arrogance can harm your game, the things you're afraid to show, what you don't want to be perceived as. And it takes me back to a point that I think attaches to discussions around EQ with poker and how to exploit people at the table. I think at the base of those discussions is, why is this player here? Among professionals, people will always give you the same answer. I'm trying to make the highest EV play, what I think is going to make me the most money. But I don't believe that for anybody. I think it's true to differing degrees for each person, but there are underlying things that we all care about. We're all social creatures, and some people care about not embarrassing themselves. Some people care greatly about being just respected. Some people very much want to be known as the best, or if not the best, a top 3 player, let's say. Other people care a lot about championships. They care about trophies, which non-poker players are going to understand translates as success. But not just recreationals. I strongly believe that even pros are constantly on a journey to get closer and closer to actually just caring about the highest EV play. One example, some people might be afraid to bluff or not bluff because they don't want to be seen having, lost all their stack or bluffing to this person. It's too embarrassing. For other people, not bluffing is too embarrassing. And then one more example would be someone might know they have a very high EV play, but other people will just think that they played it bad and they'll never get credit for it, even if it goes well. And if it goes poorly, everyone will think, oh, he sucks, or he doesn't know what the GTO solution is, for example.
Okay. Yes, the reality is that we are all emotional beings dressed in rationality. We all think we are super rational, that everything is super focused, everything is measured. But in the end, the human being is more emotional than anything else. And I honestly am a very emotional person. But I think in poker, I turn off a bit. With over the years, I've managed to turn off that emotional switch a bit. Let's say when I'm at a poker table and I try to focus on the game as much as possible to make the process as technical as possible and stick only to what matter, maximize the leave. As I was telling you before, I don't mind looking like an idiot at a televised table. If I have to make a big bluff, leave, I will leave. I'll go to bed annoyed. Then I probably won't sleep that night and will be thinking about that hand, about that mistake. But I won't care at the moment of execution. Make a huge bluff against someone who folds rarely, because I still think it has to be done, or play someone who is very tight. But I believe that in this particular sequence, yes, he himself will find a bluff. It's something that I don't care, I don't mind doing it, but I am sure that at many levels, often unconsciously, because most of the time this happens, that not even ourselves realize it, falling into those kinds of patterns that you mentioned, for sure. But I tell you, we all believe we are a bit more rational than we actually are. And notice that I just told you that every time I sit down to play, I try to turn off that emotional. I think it is something that's there, that we all have. Obviously, well, there are levels and also days. Well, on the days you have eaten better, exercised, your tolerance level is higher, you are going to be more closer to being rational. And other times when you have some problem in your personal life, you will be a bit more on the emotional side, and maybe you can to make more decisions that day out of ego or other things that have nothing to do with poker.
So let me take you to a couple of examples. You made a tremendous fold with ace king against my pocket aces.
34.51. He's going a little bit bigger than 3x, right back at Juan Pardo.
He's made some sick folds, you know.
He has.
Oh, Juanito.
And also your famous pocket kings fold with J&T and Stevie.
Couple kings here for Juan Pardo. Ouch.
JNT has already taken aces up against kings. That's how he showered James Chen. Here he is now 3-betting to $1 million over the top of Juan Pardo.
Wait, did JNT say all in?
Efforting, by the way, in a quick discussion on the sidebar with producer James, what the implications of this out-of-turn verbal declaration by JNT are in terms of Juan Pardo.
6? Yes.
No way, he folds 2 kings, Ali.
Was it 7-6? Yes.
Mind-blowing.
In those moments, you're doing all sorts of technical analysis. You're thinking about what you've seen at the table. You're thinking strategically, all sorts of metagame thoughts. Does it creep into your head? Oh shit, this is going to be very embarrassing if I'm wrong. And then you push that thought away. Or does it not even come in? If the thought does come in, I'm curious if you have any techniques, because I think that 99% of us in those big situations, if we're thinking of doing something very exploitative, it creeps in, especially if it's on stream. Oh my God, what are people going to think? But none of us think that that's productive. Do you have any techniques or advice for people beyond just don't be an asshole, do what you think is right?
Above all, is trusting myself, my intuition, and my feeling of the moment. Obviously, I know that on a technical level, with ace king, when you made a 4-bet, obviously it's a hand that calls the 4-bet or goes all in, or the hand versus Janelle Torel. Evidently, it's a hand that is all in, but I pay a lot of attention to my feeling, to my inner intuition, because since I've played so many hours of poker in my life, I think my intuition on average is going to be good. Much better than the average, so to speak. And the sizings, the timing, I try to trust a lot in that part. Let's say the atmosphere of the environment. Sometimes I will make mistakes and look ridiculous. The hand of from Torel himself, if he has a king, I look like a fool at a Triton main event final table. And I was like, well, okay. At the time, that particular hand, the way he announced all in, he said it super, super fast. Everything in my head was telling me that I could just hit with a king. He wouldn't have even snapped so quickly. I'm probably wrong. I don't know. In another life is many simulations, maybe in the Matrix, and in another simulation, he always had a king or ace jack, and I'm stupid. But the timing and the feeling of that hand told me by how he said it and with what tone of voice he said it, that he had that hand. And then the example of your hand with Ari's hand, well, I just prefer to keep quiet about it, but that's how the story of Phillies also goes. Similarly, and sizings similar.
Excellent. So, on the heels of a discussion about instincts and exploits, are you ready for a quick, highly technical game using the GTO Lab Final Table Trainer?
I'm ready.
Excellent. Okay, so it's going to be, we're spelling out donkey, burrow. Whoever gets donkey loses. 1 letter for a RNG mistake, 2 letters for an EV mistake, 3 letters for a blunder.
Vale.
And we go back and forth. So I play the hijack, you play the cutoff, I play the button, etc. If you have a decision, let's say you're going to fold on the button, and I think it's wrong, I can buzz in. I could say, nope. I give my answer. If I'm right, I get 1 letter back. If I'm wrong, I give up 2 letters.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
Perfect. Did you get a chance to play with the trainer yet?
No, I haven't used it yet.
For specs, we're going to do final table. We also have like
because I always
1624.
I always study with a normal online institute, so I might make more mistakes with, let's say, a live institute. Do you understand?
Yep. So we're gonna have live ante. You got to handicap me since I know shit about online. All right. Do you want to go first or second?
The same. I don't. Would you prefer? That's difficult. What?
Wait. Let's rock paper scissors, because this one is easy. I think.
Just as close.
Not that easy, actually. You're right. This is okay. So do you want to say winner goes first?
Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. All right, so I go first.
You win.
All right,
first?
Here we go.
Or you?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, now that I look at it, there's a lot of short stacks. So that cutoff with 40 can really murder us. The big blind covers. I think this is a sneaky fold because these two can just like maybe not him, but I think he can shove crazy wide. All right, we're not going to do explanations, but RNG4, if it mixes, I'm going fold. Anything?
GTO is fine for, but probably cutoff don't play too much aggressive. So exploit game, I do open raise.
I agree. Yeah,
But
the cutoff is not going to salvage us in real life.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, look at this. We're jamming half of our opens just because we're so scared. And that's something you probably don't want to do in real life. All right, this is you.
Fold.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, I think we're still looking at a fold.
No.
Okay. What are you challenging? You want all in or two big blinds?
Close to open raise and all in.
So if you challenge, you have to get it right.
Probably raise, normal raise.
Okay, are you challenging?
Raise, normal.
Okay, he's risking 2 letters to get -1. Oh, fuck me. All right, so I have a letter and you have a negative letter. I've got a D. And then this is on you.
Now it's your me.
You.
Oh, that's sick.
Look at this freaking open worth $4. Nice call.
I do call, I think.
Whoa, I'm challenging. I feel good about this fold. I think we're about to even it up. All right, you say call, I say fold.
You say fold?
What am I doing? Oh, shit.
It's all in?
Yeah.
It's the same call or
yeah, you basically got it right. So I have DON, and now you get the freebie. You just go all in here. That's your decision.
It's good.
Now
The
it's
same.
on me. Yeah, I fold. This is you.
With all in.
This is super tricky right off the bat. We got a super tough one.
You can't call?
Only
raise?
No, call is not on there.
So
Solve did not like call at all.
Fold probably.
Fold. Yeah, this guy covers. I think fold. I agree. RNG mistake. That's a really tough one.
Yeah.
So you go to DO, but now I have to get this right. I mean, it's not going to shove. It's, I would think, one of these two sizes.
8.7.
Oh, you're giving me a hint. Wow.
Maybe not.
Yeah. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with 8.7. EV loss. I've got 2 more letters. Oh, no. I think I'm at D. I'm at E. I'm at DONKE. This is bad news. But now you have to decide between this, and this.
Probably go all in. Sorry.
All in. Wow. Let's see.
Probably not.
Right.
Probably not in game.
Yeah.
Probably it's not necessary in the real life, but I understand why Solver do.
Yeah. Don't want this guy savaging us. That's pretty sick. Yeah, they're not playing much in the way of raises.
It's difficult.
All right. I fold. Yeah. Okay. This is you.
Fold.
Agree. Fold. Agree?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. This is you.
Raise.
Yeah, I agree. RNG 90. Sure seems close to a shove. Man. Yeah, I'm going to agree.
show too much jam, right?
Yeah, I do. Look, we're right there. The king 10, the queen jack. But no, let's see the EV difference. Check the EV difference there between raise and shove is
similar, right? Yeah.
4 cents.
In my mind, it's too much all in, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. This is me. I'm going to fold. See what pocket pair it was. Interesting. One of those tricky ones. Look at the 8s fold. That's tough.
Yeah. Fold.
Yeah, this is you.
Fold.
Fold.
Agree. Fold.
Agree. This is me. Fold.
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 Raise.
Fold. RNG 67, you want to 3-bet it?
Agree. Fold. Fold.
98. Fold.
Super close, but I think it's fold.
Yeah, let's see. I'm getting a really good deal on challenges right now because I'm only 1 letter away from death. But let me see. I mean, yeah, there's the 5.5. I agree. Nice. Let's see. 5-3 mixing.
Yeah.
Okay, this is me. I'm going to fold. Agree?
Agree. Fold.
13.5. RNG 5. Yeah, I'm just going to limp.
I go to jam.
You're jamming?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a challenge. I lose if it's not a call. RNG mistake. All right. I'm out, but let's play your jam. It's a jam. You nailed it. Fantastic. Look at the RNG. He calls 1% of the time. Yep. That's basically a pure jam. Obviously, we have a fold. All right. Juan Pardo kicked my ass. The man is fantastic. It's not like I've already played 200 hands on here and he's played 0. So obviously, I have plenty of good excuses. Let me go back.
Super fun. Pick. It sounds for a study. I like it. Never seen.
Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't endorse a product that I didn't believe in anyway, but I think it's awesome. I think it's a really fun way to study. Is exactly the kind of thing we just did. Who are 3 Spanish players who are generally underrated by the poker public? And who are 3 Triton players who you think are generally underrated by the people that you speak about poker with?
In Spain, Spanish players probably that they might become underrated by the community or that people. Mario Navarro comes to mind. Mario Navarro is playing Landelio. Javier Fernandez. They would be the 3 Spanish players that come to mind, who perhaps have not yet played. They are gradually playing more high level, and I think in the coming years, it probably can be. The most high rollers here, and in Triton, is a complicated question. The problem here is that my circle in, let's say, Triton is very small, in the sense that I only speak with Spanish speakers like Adrian Joao. So I don't exactly know how the other players perceive other types of players either. Huh? But underrated, I would probably say no. Ben? Benji? I would say Niklas has the league. Let's say they play a lot online, but in the live environment, I think they might be underrated. And I would tell you Arthur Marathon. Yes, no doubt. I think I would tell you those three.
You had a pretty epic Triton Bahamas where your partner in the 500K, Lococo, shipped it. I'm curious about your relationship with him, if you coach him at all. He's a hell of an impressive player for someone who it's not his full-time job, seems to have just kind of a natural aggression. But yeah, I was curious about if you coached him at all and what your guys' relationship is like.
Honestly, I've never coached him. I think that maybe sometimes he could have received some kind of coaching from I don't know. I'm not entirely sure about it, but certainly his game is quite impressive in terms of aggressiveness and emotional intelligence. Intuitively, he plays very good poker, probably without having dedicated so many hours to the lab, let's say, to study. And the truth is, it's impressive. He's a good friend. And honestly, I was really happy for his. Well, his victory was quite epic. He also had a small percentage of his actions, so it was all very, very fun.
Okay. Are you down for a round of overrated or underrated?
Okay, let's go.
Studying heads up as a multi-table tournament player.
Overrated.
Balancing your timing at the table.
Underrated.
Staying physically fit as a professional poker player.
Underrated.
Live tells.
Underrated.
Discussing hands with diverse poker minds.
Underrated.
All right, there's the round. Okay, we will jump to the hand history analysis. So we're going to break down a hand of yours here that I really enjoyed watching. This was on the heels of an incredible call you made against Arthur Marderosian with your pocket jacks. Looked like a very difficult hand to bluff catch, and that we'll save that for another day. But that was a fantastic call. And then you played this hand that we're going to play here. And I was at another table watching this when it came up on stream. I was very interested in this one. So it starts out, you're opening hijack. Sam flats the button. We can see super deep stacked hand, 1K big blind. So we're looking between 2 and 300 BB deep. Dimitar overcalls the small blind. Seth gets out of there. We get the 8-10-5 flop. So I won't ask you about this check. Seems like you're going to check a lot of your range. Sam bets flop small. And after Dimitar calls, you've got your first decision. Can you tell me about your situation here? What you think about your call, if you considered raise or fold at all?
The flop is quite trivial. The check makes. It's not very mysterious. In the end, the second pair. Here, the hand does become interesting since once Dimitar calls, it's not very something incredible, the call here. In any case, 25%, I think I have to pay for odds, but I will have to play very cautiously towards the tour since many times when I hit the doubles, they completed 7-9 suited and Queen 9 suited, which can be in the range of both players. So I think I do have to call on the flop, not with massive EV, but I think at that size I can call. If the size had been a third or 40%, I would probably be folding. Surely in the blog, but I'm telling you, I'm not paying super happily here.
We go to the turn, and it is the dreaded jack. So Dimitar turns an open ender. You turn 2-pair, and Sam turns a superior 2-pair. Sam goes for a pretty healthy bet here. He bets 15K, we're about to see, into 18.5. I'm curious your thoughts on his bet.
When paying, we both pay, and we are in three-way. I think it's the jack hits quite a bit. It's a card quite that a lot, both in Damchev's range, who can have all the Queen 9 suited with calling, and in my range, where I can have perfectly played the check with a hand like 7-9 or Queen 9 suited. So I think it's a spot where there might be some check raises by either of us. And I think San should be betting many hands with zero equity. That is probably not happening in real life. I mean, probably San hands like King Queen, which would be the most intuitive bluffing, is doing a second barrel here. And not playing hands like Ace 2 suited, Ace 3 suited, even 2s or so. Many times what you want here is to protect your X and be able to check these types of hands, and sometimes mix with bluffs from the lower part. So although I think that Sam here, he's probably going to have all of 7-10 jack off. He's going to cold call me with all of it. Of course, 10s, he's going to cold call me with all of it. 7-9 suited, Queen 9 suited. I think it is, you might have some bluffs here like King Queen or like King 9 suited, but they are difficult hands to make on the river. I mean, you can set up the hand for the river because I think it's a standard check call here and it doesn't change the hand back. Above all, it's about setting up his range for the turn. And honestly, I think his bluff is clearer. It would be a hand like King Queen. And I think it's a hand that isn't always hitting my set on the flop and isn't always doing a second barrel on the turn. So if it is not always doing a mix set with King Queen, and it is not always doing they compare on the turn, many times it has to bluff with something like to do or some suited, and I think those are going to take tighter lines. I think it's going to be an underblocked spot on a river. In English, more or less, for you to understand that no, there, I say that intuitive bluffs is King Queen off, but a lot of times he doesn't hit it on the flop, doesn't second barrel, he needs to bluff something or low pair like 2 or 8 2 suited. It's hard to do between two players. Play deep. So I think it's a spot that probably San is under bluffing, in my opinion.
So Sam makes that B80, polarized range, as you mentioned. And Dimitar's got a tough spot, but he makes a good discipline laydown. Can certainly be dominated here by Queen 9 suited, 9-7 suited. Looks like you've got a pretty straightforward decision. Way too strong to fold and facing the big bet. Can't imagine playing raises, we talked about. So we'll go to the river. And we get the river offsuit 4. So you check over to Sam. And let's see what size he chooses with top 2.
He do both bid, 48,000.
He bets pot. Let's hear about your decision, because I would think that I'm beat a lot here, but would not conceive of folding. Love to hear your thoughts. The man is sick. He's not thrilled. Give me a fucking break. This hand?
It's a little crazy. I mean, you know, I don't really like folding on the river, but this particular hand, what we've been developing before is I need some, I'm bluffing king queen a very high percentage of the time. And king queen is a hand that a percentage of the time will make a 3-bet, another percentage of the time will not miss it. And the times when it does mixed and makes a second barrier on the turn, many times it will be with heart. Intuitively, it is not going to be, it will be seen many times, I think, the river against king queen with the king of hearts, blocking some king 8 of hearts, some king jack of hearts, and it will be difficult for him to bluff. I think he needs to choose some bet on the turn many times, hands like 2 sometimes, some 2 suited hands, 0 equity hands. So I think there A has a lot of value sun here. A has 6-7 suited, 7-9 suited. Well, 6-7 suited, I hope many times collects the X and does not have it in his range. But we'll have 8-5-10, J 10 off, we'll have it entirely. The 7-9 suited queen, 9 suited. It is also important to keep in mind that Dan Chef has often folded in the tour some hands like he may have some queen 10 suited, some queen jack suited. That is to say, Dan Chef tries a part of Dan Chef's range. It blocks part of Sang's bluffs. He can also have hands like 8-9 suited, some 6-7 suited, but many times part of his range includes some queen or king, which are Sang's intuitive bluffs. So I don't think that Sang see enough of those types of hands in the tour and always continue on the river. And that's why I decided to make a turn. I mean, I think that on average, the meta game is under bluffing. Probably other types of profiles that are very aggressive, like Alex or Anadamo. This type of profiles will probably always find a bet with king queen on the river or have a miss set on the turn on the flop. For example, let's say that on average GTO, the miss set is 50% of the range. Maybe these players have a miss set of 75% on the flop. And maybe I think that Sam won't have 75, he'll have between 40 and 50. And from that 40 to 50, I need him to bet it on the turn every time. Because many times he's going to want to check to avoid a check raise from the small blind or from... So, if the king gave frequently, the equity is collected. And I think bad types 2, 3, or 2. I mean, sometimes never they... Bluffing, a spot is created where Sam has very few bluffs. And from my point of view, and the sizing he uses is very large, it's a pot bet. So if he had done a 66% sizing, 3/4 of the pot, probably, I feel that I would have or could pay. But with this sizing, for me, he doesn't have enough bluffs. And that's why the moment he made the bet, the intuition we talked about earlier already told me that I was always losing. And I used 3 or 4 time cards and ended up finding the fold satisfactorily.
And many time banks later, you do come to the fantastic decision of fold. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to fast forward this to get there, but you can trust me, with much pain, but surely a lot of elation 30 minutes later. Holy smokes. This guy puts it in the muck. And if I'm Sam, I'm feeling pretty sick after being like, wait, I pipped the guy and I didn't get paid? What the fuck?
Next time, which song I want to call, because after this call, I can fold, I go play, I go to bed.
I've got that cat and mouse game with Alex Kulev where I've called him like 8 times. I've been correct like 7 times. And, but the thing is Alex ever going to stop bluffing? You can't really count on that. I mean, is he actually going to skip a bluff? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Kulev, are you going to skip a bluff? Okay.
It's a deep end. It's a bit of what we have. It's a bit of what we have spoken about. What we have spoken about before. There are times when you are aware of your image and it's very smart to know where overall the meta game is folding and where you can apply all the pressure and then take advantage of that image in a spot where you're never bluffing. But people say, oh, Malacca is crazy. all the bluffs in the world, and no, I have 0 bluffs in this spot. It depends. Playing with your image is important.
It's very satisfying to find a bluff in spots that most people can't come up with one, and just knowing, that's, I think, about as satisfying as flopping a set is getting to the river with a bluff in a spot where most people have no bluffs. It's just such a good feeling. Tell me about, do you have any plans for 2025? What's Juan Pardo doing in poker this year? You mentioned you've got a stable of 16 players. I'm curious if you see yourself playing high stakes 10 years from now. Are you kind of a see how you feel month to month person, or do you have more of a plan for your career?
As long as poker keeps motivating me at the level it motivates me today, I never see myself. I can't see myself stopping playing poker at a high level. I wanna being at the highest level and being able to consider myself a kind of legend of the game, something imaginary like that in my head, and that involves competing and being one of the best for many, many years. So in the next 5 or 6 years, I see myself competing at the highest level. Work a lot day by day, that training, playing that Monday, that Wednesday, that Sunday. Have a routine in which I greatly enjoy the process. And as long as I keep enjoying the process as I do today, I want to continue for many years enjoying it at the highest level. And just last year, I was lucky enough that it was the best year of my career. Also, the previous 2023 was one of the best as well in my career. So I feel that I am probably at my best point, and I am very hungry and feel that I have not really achieved anything in poker yet. I feel like the best is yet to come, for sure. And that today I'm nobody in poker. I mean, I have the internal confidence that I can be one of the best, but I feel like I still haven't achieved anything in my mind. I mean, because I have a lot of hunger and ambition for more.
Our final question on the podcast, as always, do you have 3 recommendations for the audience? Anything, music, books, poker tips, posture tips?
To learn English, GTO Lab is the best podcast for sure for the Spanish community. That's the first advice. I would say one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give to my past self and to people. The topic for young people today who are starting in the world of poker is that health should come first. When I talk about health, I mean eating well, eating better, and doing sports and strength training. Literally, I think I see photos of myself from 5 or 6 years ago playing live, and I don't recognize myself. I mean, I had 7 or 8 kilos more and a really bloated face. I don't like what I see at all. And I think that when I prioritize my health already, above poker has gone very well for me. So if I had to rank the most important things that will, for you to earn more money playing poker and take your game to another level, I think the primary thing is to eat well and exercise. That would be the main recommendation I would make, and something I have changed a lot. And I have noticed that when I prioritize that, everything has gone much better for me. Another recommendation I could give is to read, whether it's economics, finance, psychology, personal development. I think reading when you're exposed to, at a high level poker, to a lot of stress, managing large amounts of money, I think it's very important to feed yourself with good thoughts, to take great care of that internal dialogue we talked about earlier. Surround yourself with people who bring you positive energy. It's knowing with whom you spend your time. I think it's very important because in the end, our activity requires a lot of energy. And I believe it is a very precious asset that a poker player should take care of. And each person will find it with different things. I find it in relationships with positive people who contribute to me. Ambition, self-esteem, positivity, the desire to do things, and then reading and learning new things about it, whether it be psychology, nutrition, sports, or other topics. And lastly, the third, although, well, I mentioned the GT lab for improving the language, but in the third, I would say meditation. I always, before starting my online sessions, I do 10 minutes of meditation for the past 5 or 6 years. And it's something that helps me a lot to focus and be able to maintain a very high level of concentration for 8 or 10 hours straight. So I would say those would be the 3 main things: healthy and real food, along with sports, reading a lot, and finding moments in your day-to-day before starting a poker session, doing good preparation, and entering in the optimal state, and with a clear mind to be able to develop your creativity with your game.
Excellent. Juan Pardo, muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ellie, thank you so much. Best translator I've ever worked with.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for sharing with me. Gracias por compartir conmigo o dejarme compartir esa experiencia contigo, debo decir. Thanks for letting me share this with you guys. It was fun.
Very, very comfortable in the interview. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.